Okay, welcome to another video where we'll be reviewing a tool called Omnistep. Now, this is a tool I've been wanting to review for a very long time, and the reason for that is because it's very useful for my own little first-person series that I'm creating, Night Shift Archive. If you haven't watched episode 1, you can see the link down below. So as I create first-person animations, it kind of marries my two loves, which is games and film. And my whole goal with my own production is to bring those two worlds together, and any tool that I come across that helps me to do that, I'm all over. In fact, I was the third person to buy Omnistep just because I was checking for updates and waiting for that release day. So the developer, his name is Damjan, he's been nice enough to give us an affiliate link. So if you use that affiliate link below, you're supporting this channel as well as the add-on. Now, let's just jump into the tool. There were two approaches to this video. One was to script things out and to try to take the high production value approach that I like to do. And number two was just to jump in and start, get our hands dirty and look at this tool. Now, the reason I went for option number two is because with my schedule right now, number one's never going to get done. So I figured you probably prefer to have the information rather than have nothing from me. So that's what we're going to do. Now, when we go to our preferences and you install this add-on for the first time, let's go ahead and type in Omnistep. You get these nice settings: mouse sensitivity, your key map. If you scroll down here, you can also enable your gamepad, which I'll be reviewing here. This is really thoughtful. A general theme for this review is this is a very thoughtful add-on. A lot of attention has gone into the details here, and you just don't get something like this when you're doing a first pass and releasing the bare functionality. This has been refined. It says version 1, but there's been a lot of love that's already gone into this tool. So I'd really like to see this. The only thing I changed here is I changed my jump to spacebar and my teleport to right mouse. That's just my personal preference. That feels better for me. And let's go into Omnistep itself. So when you start Omnistep, you go into a little first-person scenario here. You have a cursor and you can move around. You're going to be floating in the air until you cross over your first object that you could potentially collide with. So I thought that was really nice. Also, the first thing that I noticed is that secondary kind of springy motion when you land. It's kind of hard to see. Pay attention to the cursor here as I land. You can kind of see that, hopefully. That's just a little thing I felt like worth calling out, and was one of the first moments I realized this is going to be a really special tool. Your view, you could set it to current or active camera, so we can kind of start in our camera here, which is what I want. I'm just going to change that focal length to something more comfortable for first person, 28 millimeters. And let's see here. We can spawn at the view or the current camera, or we can spawn at a collection. So you could have a little empty, put it in a collection, and that could be your spawn point. Frame rate. Now it's worth mentioning I am playing back or rendering at 24 frames per second, but my frame rate in Omnistep is 60 frames per second. We'll experiment with that in a second when we get into animation, but just something to note, it's not going to change your scene frame rate. That's something you're going to have to be mindful of. Scene scale, gravity. This is another nice little thing. If we go to the tooltip here, it says 20 meters per second squared. It isn't realistic, but used in many engines as it feels right. So this is, again, the theme for this review. A lot of things just feel good, even if you're not consciously aware of why they're working. A lot of things just work. So I'm going to leave it at the FPS games preset. You also have source engine, you have Earth, and you have custom. So we could change this to something like moon gravity, which I think is something like 1.62 meters per second squared. But we're going to go back to FPS games. Now on to the player. You can toggle between walk and fly mode just by pressing tab. It'll give you the controls for that just in the add-on, but basically we can press E to go down, W to go up, and then just use WASD. We can also use our controller here with right and left trigger to go up and down, which is really thoughtful. In fly mode, we also have radial view control, which I thought was really cool. In radial view control, you can kind of fly around, and there's a delay between where you're pointing and where your actual view is trying to catch up to. This feels, again, it just feels really good. It feels like a first-person flying game. There's a demo scene file where we can test this one out a little bit more. We also have look dampening. The walk mode look dampening is 0.1. We could increase that to something a lot higher. And if we play, there's kind of a lag. It's hard to see. It's easier to experience if you're using this tool. But I think the value of 0.1 works really well. We also have speed. We have run speed, walk speed, jump, power, which is different from gravity. It's just a more powerful jump. Then we have acceleration. So that's the ramp up time from your walk to your run and other accelerations in the scene. And then we also have friction, ground friction coefficient, affecting how the player slows down or accelerates, especially on slopes. Okay, so these are some really nice settings to have access to. By default, it's set to always run. So what that means is it's kind of acting as most Blender tools, where you're moving fast, and if you hold down Shift, then you slow down. Shift kind of fine tunes. Most games that I play, Shift is sprint, so I'm going to turn that off, and now I'm walking, and when I hit Shift, I'm speeding up to a run. That can be a little bit more apparent if I really increase my run speed there, walking, and suddenly to running. And there's a nice kind of subtle ramp up to that you don't get with Blender's default walk mode navigation, which is just Shift tilde. So this is a really nice little feature there. I'm going to hit Control Z to bring my run speed back down. And then we have advanced player settings, which you may or may not need to get into, but we have things like bank dampening, we have teleportation speed, we also have, if I can find it here, motion dampening. And there's motion damping for vertical and horizontal. I'll get into that with some of the demo files that we have provided for us. But basically what that means, actually let me just show you here really quick. I'll just add a cube and we'll kind of duplicate this various times. To show you what I mean, let's start just with Blender's walk navigation mode. That's Shift tilde, and we hit Tab to turn on gravity. In Blender, by default, if I walked up to this mess, then I would just kind of teleport up the surface there. Not really the functionality I'm going for. In Omnistep, however, if I had this lower to where it's actually a threshold I might be able to walk up. Let's go here. Notice I'm not like teleporting up that surface. It's very smooth, and that's the vertical dampening. Instead of just going boop, boop, boop like a step, there's a little bit of a curve there. So you're going up the surface, which is really essential. And that was a big pain point. I did my whole first episode in my series, which is a first-person series in Blender. I did the whole first episode using Blender's walk navigation mode, which is Shift tilde, and it just took a ton of work after the fact in the curves modifier to work with the animation curves to get them to smooth out when I was doing something simple like walking up a set of stairs. So this is really nice. Which brings us to animation. Now if I turn on animation and record animation, what's going to happen is I go through my scene here, maybe I walk up to these steps, and when I get to the end of my timeline, I'll let it run out here. It's not going to loop back, which I think is really nice. It just says, hey, the timeline ended, do you want to press X to go back to the beginning? Which I don't. I'm done with my animation, I'm just going to press Escape. Now, if I go into my camera view, go back to frame 1 and play this back, things are really nice. It's playing back at that 24 frames per second that I have it set to in the scene. It's important to note, again, this was recorded at 60 frames per second. We're playing back at 24. So if I change this to 60 frames per second without recording a new animation, that's going to be like twice as fast. It's going to speed up the animation, which actually I didn't turn off record, so it was just recording a new one. So I'm going to set this back to 24. So this is nice. You can record at a higher frame rate and play back and render at a lower frame rate. It's just important to keep in mind what you recorded at, because if you change things after the fact in your scene settings, you'll either be speeding up or going into kind of a jittery slow motion. So just keep that in mind. What else do we have here? You can turn on to loop the timeline, so it won't have that functionality of just pressing X to loop. It'll actually just loop through it. And you also have pre-roll frames, which let's do like 3 seconds, which is 24 times 3. Now, when we record, there's a little bit of a countdown before it's actually recording the animation, which can be nice if you're performing an animation in first person. Gives you a little bit of time to orient yourself in the scene, get ready before the director says action. So that is a really cool feature. Again, just a subtle thing. I'm glad there was thought put into it. Okay, I think that's everything I want to get into with this kind of first start scene. I'm going to jump into a demo scene to show you some more. We have collision options as well. This is nice if you want your collision objects to be separate from what's in the viewport. For example, on a staircase, if you want to have a collision ramp where it is just a smooth ramp, and you want to have the actual object in the scene be the staircase geometry, then you can come in here. You can have your collision set to include or exclude collections. So you can organize that in Blender's collection system and then decide what you're going to collide with in the scene. Okay, this is also good, for example, if you plan on animating doors after the fact. You can script in your own door animation, or you could just exclude doors from your collision. So you just walk through the doors, and then for a secondary pass, you can then animate your doors opening and closing. Just one thing off the top of my head. I'll go over what I think this tool could be used for at the end, but I think the beauty of this tool is it doesn't really try to answer that for you. It is here, and it's scriptable, it's customizable, as I'll show you in a second, so you can use it for whatever you want, really. I'll get again to what I think it could be used for at the end. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the demo scenes. I'm not going to look at all of them. But let's look at physics, just because that's something we didn't really cover here. Now, how I think physics is being handled here is, it's interesting. There's no script. There's no scripting for physics. It's just using Blender's rigid body world. Now, the cool thing is we have this object that's parented to the camera, and I believe this is acting as the physics object, because when we go to our camera here and we pick the player collider, you could see it has rigid body physics set, and it's set to animated, which means it's being animated around the scene, but it's still colliding in real time, which is really cool. So if we start Omnistep, we can walk into these spheres here, and you could see collision is enabled, which is just really nice. We could even play around, try to jump on top of one. This is very customizable the way this was approached, in my opinion. I like that we have a custom physics object here. Now, there's a little message here. It says, walk into the spheres to interact. If you record the camera animation, use current cache to bake in the physics tab to ensure the simulation matches what you played. And all that's talking about is right now it actually recorded what we did here, which is really cool to jump out in the third person and watch this happen. But what that's talking about is in our scene settings, rigid body world, it's telling us to set the current cache to bake. And what that's going to do is it's going to bake that out to ensure that when you render this, it's going to render the same thing that was simulated. So I just wanted to show you that. Let's jump into our last demo scene here. There's a lot of demo scenes. We have base map view versions. We have blaster. We have glider pilot, live booleans. There's just a lot of stuff here that you should check out. I just wanted to show you live booleans because I think it segues into what I think this tool could be used for. So let's just jump into that scene. And here we have almost like a Minecraft situation going on, which is crazy to be doing in Blender. Right now we're just in Eevee. We could switch over to cycles and render this out fully ray traced. Now this is really cool, not only because we made a little tunnel there, which is cool in itself, but that was recorded because we had record animation turned on. It recorded even all of that. So we have this live Boolean demonstration now where I'm going to talk about what I think this tool could be used for. Notice that this functionality was accomplished in only 95 lines of code. I think that's worth mentioning. I don't consider myself a strong developer, but even I could handle something like 95 lines of code trying to understand that. So this unlocks a lot of functionality for a lot of users. Okay, so final thoughts. Who do I think this tool is for? Like I said, it's kind of up to you to decide that. But I will say, I see a lot of potential for first person cinematics for your first person games. You create a game in Engine, you take those assets into Blender, and you can create first person cinematics for that game. I think there's potential there. Next, game prototyping, I think, is another really strong area for this. Let's say you're trying to secure funding for a game, but you really want to focus on the environment. So you're building props and environments in Blender, and then you can put together a quick prototype that you can render out and that you know is going to look good because you can render it in something like Cycles. Yes, it takes longer to render it out, but it's not as much time as it would have taken to build a game to a prototype level in a game engine. So that one kind of depends on where your skills lie. If you're really strong in Unreal Engine developing already, then you're probably going to want to prototype your game in Engine. But this just opens up possibilities for people that want to prototype a quick idea in Blender and get familiar with a few scripting concepts. Maybe they're not strong on the development front and they want to focus on their environment within Blender. So that's another area that I see potentially could have some usefulness. The third one definitely is going to be useful is for architectural or interior visualization. So people that are walking through spaces, showing it off to clients, this is going to be a really great tool. I think just for showcasing environments in general, even for showcasing props, you could have a nice walk around animation, which could be really nice. Which leads me into the last use case, which is my own use case, which is just actual first-person productions all in Blender. So I really like the world of games. I really like the world of film. And my own personal passion project has been trying to bring those two together. And this is just another really great tool that helps me along in that process. I can record things in first person. I can even have some advanced scripting capability depending on the animation that I'm tackling. And I can record all of that to an animation that I can render out in Blender with the film quality that I'm going for. So this tool is perfect for me. It's why I was a third person to buy it. It's why I'm so excited about it. I also have my own first person controller tool, which has some additional functionality. It's not quite as polished as this, nowhere near as polished as this, I should say. But I do have some functionality like picking up objects, rotating them around, throwing them across the scene. That's one thing. I'm going to have to figure out how to script within Omnistep because I would love to use this tool, which feels much more polished, and to have that custom functionality within this. So I talked to the developer. Let's just bring up his name here so I can try my best to get it right. Domjan Minovsky. Okay, I talked with him. He gave us an affiliate link. I asked him, what does he see the future of this tool being? So I'm going to just go ahead and read his quote to you, just so we can get an idea here. Domjan said, I'll continue developing Omnistep, adding features, demos, and tutorials. However, I hope users will begin creating and sharing custom scripts that enable entirely new ways of interacting with Omnistep and Blender. While scripting is powerful, the main focus is on providing a better way to experience and explore your work. Coming from an architectural background, I found the tools we used often lacked this, which is why I created Omnistep. So some promising things there for the future of Omnistep. But overall, I think it's going to be up to you as a user for how you envision using this tool. And it's great because this is a scriptable tool. There's so much you could do. Check out the additional demo files that Domjan has provided. Hope I'm saying your name right, by the way. Go check out those files, see what's possible, get into the scripting, and there's just so much we could do with this tool. I personally am very excited. I've already started production on my next episode. This came out during production, but I am going to try to utilize it in as many ways as I can, as well as my own first-person tool. To me, this is just opening up a whole new category of Blender that I'm just excited to continue to develop and expand on. Again, it marries my two passions of games and film into hopefully what can be a sustainable series, something that I work on into the future. Anyway, thanks for checking this video out. Hopefully that's been a good thorough look at this tool. Go pick up the tool at my affiliate link below. Thank you, Damjan, for providing that, and I'll see you in the next video.